She had always known life was harsh, but she had never imagined it could feel this cold. Every morning, she woke up in a tiny, cramped room that barely had space for her thin mattress. The walls were old, peeling with years of neglect, and the small window was so dirty that the sunlight that tried to filter in barely touched the floor. She rubbed her eyes and tried to shake off the fatigue that seemed to settle into her bones overnight. Hunger was a constant companion, but she had learned to ignore it the way people learn to ignore a dull ache that never really goes away. Her day began with the search for work. There were no promises of a steady job, only small tasks here and there that would earn her enough for a meal or two. She moved through the crowded streets, slipping past carts and stalls, careful not to bump anyone. Every coin mattered, every small job mattered. And she had learned to keep her head down and her steps light. People rarely noticed her, but when they did, it was never kind. Shopkeepers shouted at her if she lingered too close to their counters, and children sometimes mocked her rags and the way she carried herself. She had long stopped fighting back. The streets had taught her that survival depended on silence, on moving quickly, and on trusting almost no one. One afternoon, as she made her way through a busy shopping area, her stomach grumbled louder than usual. She passed a small bakery, the smell of fresh bread curling into the air. She paused, imagining the warm, soft bread on her tongue, but the coins in her pocket were barely enough for the bus ride home. She shook her head and moved on. Hunger was no excuse for trouble. She told herself this, but every step became heavier with longing. Then she saw it. A distracted moment, a small purse left unattended at a stall. For a second, a flicker of desperation crossed her mind. She would never steal normally, but today her stomach twisted so sharply it hurt. She looked around, hoping no one was watching. Her hand moved closer to the purse, but before she could touch it, a shout rang out. "Hey, stop, thief!" Panic surged through her veins. Her legs moved before her brain could catch up, sprinting through the crowd. People turned, startled, as she darted past them. The purse clattered to the ground somewhere behind her, but she didn't stop to see who had picked it up. Every heartbeat felt like thunder in her chest, and every breath burned in her lungs. She couldn't let them catch her. Not today, not like this. She twisted down an alley, hoping to lose anyone who had seen her. Trash bins lined the walls, and the smell was thick, but she ignored it. Her mind raced. She needed a plan, any plan, just to survive another day. The alley led to a smaller street, quieter, but she knew from experience that quiet could be dangerous too. Still, it was better than the main road where everyone could see her. She paused behind a corner, gasping for air, listening. Voices shouted behind her, but they were fading. For a moment, she allowed herself a small relief. Maybe she had escaped. Maybe the world wasn't ready to catch her just yet. Her thoughts wandered to her family, the ones who had abandoned her when she was just a child. Memories of a small house, a mother's voice, and a father's absence were painful. She had learned early that she could only rely on herself. Trusting anyone else had brought nothing but hurt. Yet, even as she shook these thoughts away, she felt a flicker of something she didn't want to. Name loneliness. Hours passed. She found herself near a wealthy part of the city. The buildings towered above her, glistening with glass and steel, shining in the sunlight like a different world.
House.
She paused, staring up at the balconies where people laughed, drank coffee, and seemed to float in their own perfect lives. She had always known that she didn't belong here, and yet a small part of her longed to be noticed, to be cared for, even if just for a moment. Suddenly, a shadow fell over her. A security guard from a nearby store stepped out, frowning. "You there? Stop," he called. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't even seen him.
Apps.
Without thinking, she ran, dodging past a fountain and through a small garden. People gasped and moved out of her way, unsure of what was happening. The chase was relentless. She felt her legs burning, her lungs screaming for air, but she couldn't slow down. Every turn of the corner, every step, was a gamble. She knew. The streets like the back of her hand, but in the rich district, every street felt unfamiliar. Her mind raced, trying to remember every alley. Every shortcut that could save her. She stumbled once, almost falling, but caught herself on a railing. Her heart pounded so loud she thought it might burst. Behind her, the shouts grew louder. Fear surged, sharper than hunger, colder than the winter air she had endured countless times. She had to survive. Survival wasn't about right or wrong, it was about life. And today, life meant running. Finally, she ducked into an abandoned warehouse. The door creaked as she pushed it open, and she slipped inside, hiding behind old crates and broken furniture. Her body shook uncontrollably, but at least she was safe for now. She pressed her face to the cool wood, listening. The sounds of the city felt distant, muffled by walls and shadows. She allowed herself a single breath, deep and shaky, just trying to calm the storm inside her. As she sat there, catching her breath, she thought about what had just happened, how quickly life could turn against her. One small mistake, 1 second of weakness, and the world had labeled her a thief. And yet, she hadn't stolen the purse. Her heart ached, not just from running, but from the realization that no one believed in her innocence. She had always known life was unfair, but moments like this made it almost unbearable. Hours slipped by as she waited, hidden in the shadows. The city outside continued its noisy, busy rhythm. People moved without care, unaware of her struggle. Unaware of the small girl who ran through their streets, hunted like an animal. She tried to quiet her mind, tried to make herself small, invisible, like she always had. Survival demanded it. Eventually, she emerged cautiously, testing the streets before she fully stepped out. She was bruised, tired, and her stomach growled again, but she moved with quiet determination. She had to find shelter, food, and a place to rest before the next day. Life had no breaks for the desperate, no pauses for those who struggled to survive. That night, she curled into herself, trying to find warmth in the thin blanket she carried. Her mind replayed the chase, the fear, and the looks on the faces of those who thought her a thief. She felt anger. Yes, but also an unfamiliar sense of hope. Somehow she had escaped. Somehow she had survived another day. The billionaire lived in a world that seemed completely separate from the one she struggled to survive in. His life was one of routine and luxury, yet it carried its own weight. Every morning, he woke up in a room that looked more like a palace than a bedroom. Tall windows that overlooked the city, letting in sunlight that touched every corner of his perfect life. The room was immaculately clean, every object in its place, as if the world could be controlled with mere order. He moved through his mansion with quiet purpose, his steps confident, his mind occupied with the endless responsibilities that came with his position. His day would be filled with meetings, decisions, and interactions that required precision and careful thought. Yet there was something missing, an emptiness he couldn't quite explain. Wealth and power had given him everything material, but they had not filled the loneliness that came with being constantly surrounded by people who wanted something from him. On that particular day, he glanced at the surveillance monitors in his office as he often did out of habit. The screens displayed different corners of the city, cameras that watched over streets, shops, and parks. He rarely paid attention to individual faces, only 2 patterns and movements that mattered for security. But something caught his eye that he couldn't ignore. A girl running, eyes wide with fear, weaving through crowded streets as if her life depended on every step. He leaned forward, curiosity sparked. She was small, agile, and her movements were desperate, yet calculated. There was something familiar in her struggle, a rawness that reminded him of stories he had heard of survival in harsh conditions. Most people would have ignored her, assuming she was just another desperate street child or troublemaker, but he couldn't. He didn't know why, yet he found himself watching her, feeling a pull he had not experienced in years. She ran past the rich district, slipping through alleys and narrow streets, trying to escape the chaos behind her. The billionaire studied her carefully. He noticed the fear in her eyes, the way she stumbled but kept moving, and the faint shadow of exhaustion that clung to her. It was not just the act of running that captured his attention, it was her determination, her will to survive despite every obstacle. Hours passed as he watched from afar, yet he could not turn away. He saw her pause behind a corner, pressed against the wall as if trying to disappear, and he imagined what it must feel like to be hunted, to have the world believe you were guilty when you were not. He could sense the weight of her life, the constant fight for survival that she carried with her every day. Something about her resilience touched him deeply, stirring emotions he had long buried beneath his routine. Meanwhile, the girl had no idea she was being observed. She found shelter for the night, curled up in a hidden corner, trying to make herself invisible. She thought about the chase, the fear, and the people who had yelled at her. The world was harsh, unforgiving, and it seemed no one would believe in her innocence. But somewhere in the depths of her mind, a tiny flicker of hope persisted. She did not know it yet. But her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. The next day, the billionaire decided to leave his office and step into the streets. He had no specific plan, only a strong curiosity and a desire to understand more about the girl he had seen. He walked through the bustling city, blending in despite his expensive attire, observing people as they went about their lives. He noticed the stark contrast between the wealthy districts he frequented and the areas where people struggled to make ends meet. His mind wandered to the girl, wondering how someone could navigate this world alone, without protection or guidance. As he continued, fate seemed to guide their paths closer. The girl, still unaware of his presence, moved through the streets, searching for food, water, and a safe place to rest. Her stomach ached, and her feet were sore, but she pushed forward, refusing to give up. She had learned that giving up meant defeat. Defeat was something she could not afford. He finally saw her from a short distance, standing near a small market, scanning the area as if waiting for danger. Her eyes met his for a brief moment. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of struggle, a shared understanding that went beyond words. He didn't approach immediately. He watched, careful not to startle her. He wanted to see her for who she truly was, not just as a figure running from something or someone. The girl sensed a presence and turned, her heart racing once more. But there was no aggression in his eyes, no accusation, only a quiet observation that made her pause. For a moment, she felt a strange sense of calm, as if someone had finally seen her without judgment. She didn't understand it yet, but it made her wary and curious at the same time. He followed her at a distance, making sure she remained safe without intruding on her space. As they moved through the city, he noticed the small things, the way she avoided puddles, the careful steps she took over uneven streets, and the way she protected her few belongings. Every action spoke of resilience, intelligence, and a will to survive that went beyond mere instinct. By late afternoon, the girl found herself trapped in a small alley, cornered by a group of men who wanted to accuse her falsely of theft once again. Fear surged through her, and she braced for another chase, another fight she might not survive. But before the situation escalated, a figure appeared, tall and commanding, stepping between her and the men. It was the billionaire. His presence alone was enough to make the men hesitate. He spoke calmly but firmly, and they backed away, unsure of what they had stumbled into. The girl stared, unsure whether to run or trust this stranger who had suddenly appeared. The fear in her chest warred with a tiny spark of hope. Could this man be different from everyone else she had known? He looked at her, studying her face, the dirt and bruises, the fear and defiance. He said nothing at first, only offered a hand nod as a demand, but as an invitation. She hesitated, memories of betrayal and abandonment flashing through her mind. Yet something in his eyes told her he meant no harm. After a long, tense moment, she accepted the hand, allowing herself to be guided away from danger. As they walked away, he didn't ask questions immediately. He let her catch her breath, letting her feel safe in a way she had never felt before. For the first time in a long while, she didn't have to run, didn't have to hide, didn't have to survive alone. The city continued its noisy rhythm around them. But inside the small bubble of safety he created, she began to realize that maybe, just maybe, there could be someone who cared about her well-being by evening. They reached a quiet, safe place he had arranged, a small, comfortable room with food, water, and warmth. She looked around cautiously, unsure if this was another trap, another test, another disappointment waiting to happen. But the kindness was genuine, the care evident in every detail. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax, if only slightly, and accept that she was no longer entirely alone in the world. The billionaire watched her, feeling an unfamiliar sense of responsibility and connection. He had rescued her from immediate danger, but he also knew that saving her from the world itself would be far more complicated. He didn't yet understand how this small, fragile girl could impact his life, or how the bond between them might grow. But he sensed that meeting her was the beginning of something important. As night fell, they sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. She thought about the streets, the constant fear, and the moments that had led her here. He thought about the loneliness, the emptiness of wealth without connection, and the strange pull he felt toward her resilience and innocence. Though they came from different worlds, both recognized a shared truth: life could be cruel, but moments of kindness and understanding could change everything. And so, the billionaire and the girl, two people from vastly different worlds, began a story that neither of them could have predicted, a story that would challenge them, teach them, and ultimately bind them together in ways they had never imagined possible. In that quiet evening, with the city lights shimmering outside, the first fragile threads of trust and hope were woven, setting the stage for a journey neither would forget. The next morning, the girl woke up to the sound of soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. For the first time in many days, she felt a sense of calm. She was in a small, clean room, with food waiting for her on a table nearby. Her stomach rumbled in quiet anticipation, and she cautiously stepped forward, not entirely sure what to expect. The room smelled faintly of fresh air and warmth. Something she had long forgotten existed in her life. The billionaire watched her from a distance, sitting quietly in a chair, his presence calm but observant. He had prepared everything carefully, not wanting to overwhelm her, but also wanting to show that he could provide safety and care. He noticed the way she hesitated, how her eyes scanned every corner, as if expecting danger to jump out at her. He understood this fear. He had not lived her life, but he could see the scars it had left. After a few moments of silence, he spoke gently. "You don't have to be afraid. You're safe here." She froze, unsure of what to say. No one had ever spoken to her with such calm authority and kindness. Her life had been full of harsh words and accusations, so this moment felt almost unreal. Yet, the sincerity in his voice was undeniable. She nodded slightly, still wary, but feeling a strange relief that she could let down her guard. Even just a little. Breakfast was simple, but it was enough to make her feel full for the first time in days. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, aware that she didn't need to worry about someone taking it away or accusing her of stealing. The act of eating without fear felt almost luxurious. The billionaire watched her, noticing the small gestures, the way she held the cup, the careful way she chewed, and the gratitude that was slowly shining through her cautious expression. Once she had eaten, he decided it was time to talk more, but he did so gently. "I saw you yesterday," he began, "running through the streets. You were in danger. I wanted to make sure you were safe." Her eyes widened slightly. "Why would you care?" she asked, her voice trembling. Years of mistrust made her doubt kindness. She had learned that people only helped when they wanted something. He shook his head slowly. "I don't expect anything from you. I just saw someone in trouble and wanted to help." The honesty in his words made her hesitate. She had been betrayed too many times to trust easily, but she felt something shift within her. Maybe not full trust, but a small seed of hope began to grow. Over the next few hours, he walked her through the mansion, showing her small comforts she had never experienced before. The soft carpets, the warm blankets, and the clean water were simple things, but to her, they were treasures. She moved cautiously, curious but careful not to break anything. Every new experience was both exciting and frightening, reminding her that life could be different, that safety was possible. He didn't push her to explain her past or to answer questions he had. Instead, he offered patience, giving her the time and space to feel comfortable in his presence. He could see her walls slowly beginning to lower, though he knew it would take time. Trust was not built overnight, especially not for someone who had survived on the streets for so long. As the day went on, He arranged small tasks for her, simple things to help her feel a sense of purpose and control. It could have been cleaning a small room, organizing items, or learning how to use certain tools. These tasks were not about labor or punishment. They were about giving her confidence and a sense of agency. Each small success brought a spark of pride to her eyes, a sign that she was starting to believe in herself again. In the evening, they sat together in the garden, watching the sun set behind the city skyline. The girl's eyes reflected the colors of the fading light, and she felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time, she could sit without fear, without the constant urge to flee. The billionaire sat beside her, not speaking, just offering silent companionship. Words were not always necessary. Sometimes just being present was enough. As night fell, she curled up in her new bed, thinking about the events of the day. She had survived countless dangers, but this day felt different. It felt like a turning point. She had been chased, accused, and abandoned, yet she had found someone who chose to protect her without conditions. She didn't fully understand why, but she felt a faint sense of belonging. The billionaire, in his study, reflected on the girl's resilience. He had seen many people struggle, but her determination and spirit struck a chord within him. He understood that life had not been kind to her, and he felt a responsibility growing stronger every hour. This was no longer just about a single act of saving her. It was about giving her a chance at a life she had never imagined. Days turned into weeks, and their bond slowly deepened. She began to trust him more, though still cautiously. She would ask questions, and he would answer honestly, never forcing her to accept more than she was ready for. She learned about his world, the responsibilities he carried, and the loneliness he had endured despite his wealth. In turn, he learned about her experiences, the hardships she had faced, the way she had survived against all odds. One day, she confided in him about a fear that had haunted her for years. "I've never had anyone believe in me," she said softly. "People always see me as a problem, someone to ignore or punish." He looked at her, understanding the weight of those words. "I believe in you," he said firmly. "I don't need you to be anything other than yourself. You're not a problem. You're strong, and you deserve to be safe and cared for." The honesty and warmth in his voice brought tears to her eyes. She had never heard such words directed at her before, and the feeling was overwhelming. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she could be seen, valued, and protected. Together, they began to navigate the complexities of this new life. She learned to enjoy small comforts, to laugh without fear, and to trust cautiously but sincerely. He learned to care deeply for someone in a way he had never experienced, realizing that protecting her was not just about wealth or influence, but about patience, understanding, and emotional connection. Through this journey, both of them discovered the power of kindness, the importance of trust, and the resilience of the human spirit. The girl, once chased and alone, began to see a world filled with hope. The billionaire, once surrounded by wealth but isolated in his own life, began to see the profound impact one life could have on another. By the end of part 3, the foundation of a deep emotional bond had been laid. They were no longer just protector and protected. They were companions in a journey of trust, understanding, and mutual growth. Both had been changed by the encounter, and both knew that their story was only just beginning. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges and discoveries lay ahead. Bound by a fragile yet growing thread of hope and care, days turned into weeks, and the girl began to grow accustomed to her new surroundings. Every corner of the mansion, every room, every small detail that had once seemed foreign and intimidating now felt a little less so. She moved with more confidence, her steps lighter, her eyes less cautious. But despite the comfort, there was still a part of her that held back, a part that had learned too well to protect itself from disappointment and betrayal. The billionaire continued to be patient, giving her the space she needed while gently guiding her toward understanding and trust. He had learned that she was resilient, not because she was fearless, but because she had survived countless trials. Her strength was quiet, rooted in endurance rather than aggression. Observing her, He began to understand that his role was not to change her, but to offer stability and protection, allowing her to grow on her own terms. One morning, he found her sitting by the large windows of the study, looking out at the city below. Her hands rested on her knees, her eyes distant and thoughtful. He approached quietly, not wanting to startle her, and took a seat across from her. "You've come a long way," he said softly. "I can see it in the way you carry yourself now." She turned to him, a faint smile brushing her lips. "I feel different," she admitted. "Like maybe I can breathe without worrying so much." He nodded, understanding more than words could convey. "You've survived so much, and yet here you are, still strong. That's remarkable. But it's also okay to let yourself rest, to let yourself feel safe. You don't have to fight every moment." The girl looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of surprise and curiosity. She had spent so many years fighting for every breath, every meal, that the concept of simply being safe felt almost foreign. Yet, in his presence, it felt possible. She began to realize that safety didn't mean weakness. It meant the freedom to grow. As the days passed, they shared more time together. He introduced her to books and stories, not as lessons, but as windows into other worlds and perspectives. She listened, fascinated, discovering that knowledge could be a tool, a comfort, and even a form of escape. They walked through the gardens, discussing everything from the simplest observations of nature to the broader complexities of life. Each conversation deepened their understanding of one another, building a bridge between their vastly different experiences. However, trust was not without its challenges. Old fears and insecurities surfaced. Sometimes she would hesitate to speak, fearing judgment or disappointment. Other times, she would retreat to the corners of the mansion, needing solitude to process emotions that had been buried for years. The billionaire recognized these moments not as setbacks, but as part of the journey. He gave her the patience she needed, never pushing too hard, never forcing her to reveal more than she was ready to share. One evening, a misunderstanding occurred. She overheard a conversation about her past that made her feel exposed and vulnerable. Her heart raced, and old fears resurfaced. She retreated to her room, tears streaming down her face, feeling the familiar sting of betrayal. The billionaire noticed her absence and went to find her, gently knocking on the door before entering. He approached her slowly, sitting beside her without saying a word at first. He allowed her to cry, to release the tension that had built up inside. After a few minutes, he spoke softly. "I know it's hard to trust after everything you've been through. I don't expect you to understand or accept everything at once. But I want you to know that I am here for you, no matter what." She looked at him, the raw emotion in her eyes reflecting both fear and hope. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. He paused, considering his words. "Because you deserve to be cared for. Because your life matters. Because I can't imagine standing by while someone as brave as you struggles alone." The sincerity in his voice broke down another layer of her defenses. She realized that this man, who came from a world so different from hers, saw her not as a problem, not as someone to fix, but as a human being worthy of care and respect. For the first time, she felt truly seen. Over the next few days, they continued to navigate the delicate balance between independence and guidance. He encouraged her to explore her interests, to express herself creatively, and to take small steps toward building a sense of normalcy. She began to laugh more freely, to move through the mansion without the constant weight of fear, and to allow herself moments of joy without guilt. They also faced challenges from the outside world. Some people in his circle were skeptical of her presence, questioning her background and intentions. Others underestimated her, assuming she would be easily intimidated or controlled. These situations tested both her resilience and their bond. Together they faced each challenge, learning to trust each other's judgment and support. One afternoon, they visited a nearby park, a place she had never been before. The greenery, the open space, and the simple pleasures of the day were overwhelming at first. She ran her fingers over the leaves, felt the grass beneath her feet, and marveled at the sunlight filtering through the trees. The billionaire watched her, smiling quietly, understanding that these small moments were monumental for her, steps toward a life she had never imagined. As they sat together on a bench, she spoke softly. "I never thought I'd have moments like this. Moments where I feel normal." He nodded. "Normal is what we make of it. You've endured so much, but now you have a chance to define your own life on your own terms. And I will be here to support you every step of the way." The words sank in, resonating deeply. She realized that trust, once earned, could be transformative. She began to see that her past did not have to define her future, that she could embrace the care and stability being offered without feeling weak or dependent. As part 4 drew to a close, their relationship had grown stronger. They had faced challenges, navigated fears, and built a foundation of trust and mutual respect. The girl, once chaste and alone, now had a safe place to grow and heal. The billionaire, once distant and isolated, had discovered the profound impact of compassion, patience, and connection. Together, they were ready to face the next stage of their journey, prepared for both the joys and trials that lay ahead. Bound by a deep and growing bond, the days that followed were full of quiet learning, laughter, and small moments of peace, but the girl's past was never far behind. Shadows of fear and old dangers lingered, reminding her that the world outside her safe haven could still be cruel. The billionaire understood this all too well, and he knew that protecting her would require more than just walls and comfort. It would require courage, decisiveness, and unwavering presence. One afternoon, while she was exploring the mansion's gardens, a message arrived that shook the fragile sense of security she had begun to feel. Someone from her past had discovered her location and intended to bring trouble back into her life. Panic gripped her chest, memories of running and hiding flashing vividly in her mind. She froze, unsure what to do, and the fear she thought she had left behind returned in full force. The billionaire noticed the sudden change in her demeanor immediately. He approached, his voice calm but firm. "Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone. I'm here." She looked at him, tears threatening to spill, and for the first time, she didn't run. She allowed herself to lean on him, feeling the strength of his presence. He guided her inside, helping her prepare for the challenge they were about to face together. The fear was still there, but it was tempered by the knowledge that she was not alone anymore. That evening, the threat became tangible. A group arrived at the mansion, intending to confront her. They did not expect the billionaire to be prepared, and they certainly did not anticipate the determination he would bring. He stepped forward, calm yet commanding, protecting her with a quiet authority that left no room for doubt. Every decision, every word, was deliberate, aimed at ensuring her safety without escalating the danger unnecessarily. The girl watched in awe, seeing not just his wealth and power, but his willingness to put himself in the line of potential conflict to protect her. It was a revelation. She realized that this was more than just protection, it was care sacrifice, in a bond that had grown stronger than she had imagined possible. Her heart, which had always guarded against trust, felt a warmth that had been absent for years. After the confrontation ended without harm, the girl felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She had survived countless dangers on her own, but this time had been different. She had not been alone, and the experience deepened her understanding of what it meant to trust and to be cared for. The billionaire had not just saved her. He had shown her that strength could be shared, and that vulnerability did not have to be a weakness. In the days that followed, it focused on rebuilding the sense of normalcy that had begun to take shape. The girl continued to explore her interests, discovering talents and passions that had long been buried beneath survival instincts. She learned to express herself, to take joy in small victories, and to appreciate the stability and comfort she had been given. Every laugh, every smile, every moment of curiosity was a testament to the resilience of her spirit. The billionaire, in turn, reflected on the transformation he had witnessed. He had saved her from immediate danger, but more importantly, he had nurtured a sense of belonging and trust. He realized that wealth and influence were meaningless without connection, and that the greatest value in life came from caring for others and witnessing their growth. He had discovered a depth of emotion that he had not experienced before. a bond that transcended simple protection and entered the realm of genuine love and responsibility. Together, they faced small challenges and triumphs, learning from one another and growing stronger as a team. She began to understand that life could be different, that it could include kindness, safety, and opportunities for growth. He began to see that life was richer when shared with someone whose perspective, courage, and humanity could illuminate parts of the world he had never fully appreciated. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the garden, the girl spoke softly. "I used to think I had to face everything alone. I never imagined anyone would care like this," smiled, placing a hand over hers. "You don't have to be alone anymore. You never will be. You're stronger than you know, but it's okay to let someone stand with you." The words were simple, but their impact was profound. She felt the weight of years of fear and abandonment lift slightly, replaced by a sense of hope and belonging that had been foreign to her for so long. She realized that her journey was not just about surviving, but about learning to live fully, to embrace trust, and to open herself to connection. As the days turned into weeks, their bond continued to strengthen. They shared laughter, stories, and quiet moments of reflection. The girl discovered the joy of learning, exploring, and dreaming, while the billionaire learned the value of patience, empathy, and unwavering support. Each moment reinforced the truth that they had found something rare and precious in one another, bond that could withstand the challenges of the world and flourish despite the scars of the past. The story reached its emotional climax when the girl, for the first time, expressed her gratitude openly. "You didn't just save me," she said, her voice steady and sincere. "You helped me believe that I can have a life where I'm safe, where I matter, where I can be myself." He looked at her, a deep sense of fulfillment in his eyes. "And you remind me that life is richer when we care for one another. You've taught me as much as I've taught you, maybe more." In that moment, the full weight of their journey became clear. The girl, once chaste and alone, had found protection, trust, and a place where she could grow. The billionaire, once distant and isolated, had discovered the power of compassion and connection. Together, they had transformed each other's lives, proving that kindness, patience, and understanding could overcome fear, mistrust, and the harshness of the world. By the end of Part 5, the story reached a resolution filled with hope and emotional depth. The girl had embraced safety, trust, and belonging, while the billionaire had embraced the joy and responsibility of caring for someone with such resilience and heart. Their journey was complete in one sense, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, a life built on mutual respect, shared strength, and the enduring bond that had grown from fear, struggle, and ultimately love. As she drifted into a restless sleep, the city hummed around her. She dreamed of a life where she didn't have to run, where hunger didn't gnaw at her constantly, and where people saw her for who she truly was. In her dreams, she imagined kindness, protection, and trust, things that had always been absent from her reality. For a moment, in sleep, she allowed herself to believe that such a life might exist. Morning came with its usual cold light, and she awoke with the weight of survival pressing on her chest once more. But there was something different this day. A sense that perhaps, somewhere in the chaos and indifference, there could be someone who might see her not as a thief, not as a shadow of society, but as a human being worthy of care. She did not know where this thought had come from, but it made her move with slightly more purpose as she stepped into the bustling streets once again. Survival had taught her many things, but today, for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope.